Should the fairy type have been called the light type or the magic type instead? I think either would have been more accurate. Only a handful of these charming creatures even remotely resemble traditional fairies, and even fewer have the devious nature associated with the Fae of legend. Hello! Come on in, take a seat! And welcome back to another episode of my favorite Pokemon of the given type. And today I want to talk about fairy type Pokemon. Introduced in Gen 6, it was the first new type to be introduced in over 10 years, with Dark and Steel types being added way back in the Johto days. It was originally made to help balance out the type chart by reducing the raw power of dragon types, whose only weakness before was the Glass Cannon Ice type and other dragons. The introduction of the Fairy type also elevated the strength of the Poison and Steel type Pokemon, making both types more viable in competitive play. However, with Fairy types being more common than Dragon and Steel types, and in general having insane stats, the Fairy type has become a powerhouse in its own right. As a queer person, you'd think I'd be all over Fairy type Pokemon, but honestly, I'm not as drawn to them as I expected. But I do love some of these babies. Maybe if they were called the Magic type, I would have found myself explicitly drawn to them more. I mean, how would these Pokemon have been changed? How would their designs be conflated or altered? Anyways, I could rant about that for a while, and that's not what this video is about. So, let's get into the list. I do have an honorable mention, Togepi. Togepi is in my honorable mentions because I didn't want to have the full Togi line in this list, but Togepi was the first Johto Pokemon we see in the anime, appearing in egg form at the end of the Jurassic episode, where we also get to meet Ash's Charizard, as it evolves from Charmeleon in order to kick Aerodactyl's ass. I think Togepi was Pokemon's attempt to make a mascot Pokemon that could rival Pikachu's throne. But unfortunately, Togepi never got close to the fame and wide belovedness of Pikachu. I don't know why. I love its sweet little design, and the red and blue triangles give it an air of mystery that makes it feel like it could become anything. And now on to the full list. At number 10, I have Aromatisse. She is such a diva with her thigh-high slit fur coat dress and her big eyelashes that look like if she blinked hard enough, she could fly away. I had a big aromatherapy phase in my late teens and early 20s, and I think I would really enjoy working with Aromatisse to see what kind of effects the scents she can produce could do. At number 9, I have Mawile, another diva in her own right. She was one of the first fairy types to truly fall into the alluring but deadly fairy trope, with her docile face being a front for the menacing jaws that lurk behind. Even before she was a fairy type in Ruby and Sapphire, I remember spending hours trying to catch one, though I don't think I ever really used her in battle because her stats are so weak, which is unfortunate. Even now, with being two of the biggest powerhouse types in the game, her battle prowess is a little lackluster. Still though, I like her style. At number 8 is Whimsicott, such a little cutie. Another fairy type that falls into the trickster, mischief-making fairy trope. Ironically, looking at the Pokédex entries for X and Y for that gen's fairy types, none of them are mischievous. Unless you count Dedenne's electric stealing, which seems more rodent and pest work than fey mischief, or Swirlix's sugar cravings. I know there's like a myth where if you throw sugar in front of a fairy, they have to stop and count all the sugar grains, but Anyways, I really like Whimsicott. Its design is that of a friend. And I love her flavor text in her Pokédex entries on how she can fit into small gaps like the wind. And the fact that she's called the Wind-Veiled Pokemon is just so cool. At number 7, I have Hatterene. Trust me, I love a witchy Pokemon. I do. And I love Hatterene's aesthetic. The big witch hat, the soft blue and pink gradient scheme, the little details, you know? But the reason why she's so low on this list despite all of that is because she looks like a slime monster more than a witch. And also, she's kind of just a reskinned, slower Gardevoir. So, lots of cool things going here, but not necessarily my favorite, especially compared to the Pokemon coming up on this list, which I really struggled to get into the order that felt right to me. At number 6, I have Mimikyu. I love this little freak. She has such a tragic backstory, wanting to be loved but cursed to have a physical body so terrifying that it can cause the instant eviction of your soul from your body if you look at it. So in order to get the love they so desperately want, they need to wear the discarded doll skin of the most popular Pokemon to ever exist. Talk about imposter syndrome. And the fact that its ability, Disguise, is linked to this tragic story just makes it so much cooler. I love it when game mechanics aren't just something in a game, but are built into the lore and mythos of the story the game is trying to tell. Also, my Mimikyu cleaned house in my Sun and Moon playthroughs. At number 5 is Florges. Though this Pokemon might be argued to be another reskin of Gardevoir, I think her baked in lore and variant colors make her a completely unique Pokemon. I love her concept, being a guardian of flowers and gardens, and how she is normally very passive and kind, but will hunt you down if you vandalize her garden. I love a vindictive queen. And number 4 is Clefable. Clefable is a Pokemon that I've always wanted to have on a party, but never actually had one, until Sun and Moon came out, and I realized that my team was basically the same as Luzamine's, just without Beware. This is the original fairy Pokemon, and the Clefairy slash Mount Moon episode of Pokemon is still one of my favorite episodes from the first season. Her connection to the moon, her cute little face, and her specialty move being Metronome all really make this Pokemon so cool to me. I love her. At number 3 is Togekiss. Togekiss was a necessary and brilliant addition to the Toga line. Though I don't like that they kind of centered it on an almost plain-like design for this Pokemon. It kind of mellows out the mystique of the Pokemon in my opinion. However, her design could also be seen of that being the wings of an angel, which has the complete opposite effect of making her mundane. And there's something about that duality that really makes me appreciate the design even more. But the stats on this Pokemon are pretty rad. And the addition of the fairy type really took Togekiss into the heights of a powerhouse Pokemon. She was such a great Pokemon to have in my Legends of Arceus playthrough. And of course, I can't mention Togekiss without bringing up Dawn's Togekiss into consideration, who was just so sweet and such a clean sweeper for Dawn at the end of Diamond and Pearl. I love this Pokemon. And at number 2, I have Togetic. I know I foreshadowed that I really liked this Pokemon line already, and I really struggled with who would get the runner-up spot in this list between Togetic and Togekiss. But I think the emotional and mythic payoff of a Togepi Mirage episode really gives Togetic that spot in my number 2 fairy list. The lore of the Mirage world, the heartbreaking goodbye, Misty being back in this episode. It was such a good episode in Ruby and Sapphire. And getting to see our little PPP, which is Pikachu Cant for a Togepi, you can look it up, evolve and become this guardian Pokemon was so good. I also really love that Togetic felt like a mid-stage evolution despite the years of it not being the case. It still gave the Pokemon some mythic weight, making the mind wander on what kind of potential this Pokemon really had to become. And at my number 1 spot is, of course, Alolan Ninetales. Alolan Ninetales is such a wonderfully designed Pokemon and really drives home the idea, for me at least, that the fairy type should have been called the magic type. She is so beautiful and magical. Like I said in my Ice type video, it's so fitting that she was mistaken for a deity incarnate for who knows how long. Alolan Ninetales is such a close runner-up against Espeon for being one of my all-time favorite Pokemon, and a Pokemon I would do anything to have in real life. So while fairy types might not always look like fairies, or behave like them, the ones I love feel just as magical. Let me know which fairy type is your favorite in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more cozy Pokemon chaos.